Shalom Aleichem Rabotai. We are continuing the Mishnah Yomi with the second day of Sheviit. Had a good solid start yesterday, so this is for the 17th day of the Omer, the second of Iyar. We are in the first parak of Sheviit, Mishnah Gimel. It is important to note we're talking about Tosefet Sheviit, the time of prohibition, even Erev Sheviit, before Sheviit. So there's a Gemara in Moed Katan discusses this is called Mishnah Rishona, the first teaching. But Rabban Gamliel says this no longer applies because these rules of Tosefet Sheviit only really apply deraita in the time of the Beit HaMikdash. Unfortunately, without a Beit HaMikdash, we don't have to follow Tosefet Sheviit. So Rabban Gamliel decreed that it's not necessary, and they could plow the fields with trees right up to Rosh Hashanah of the Shemitah year. So if you were in Eretz Yisrael shortly before Rosh Hashanah last year, and you saw someone plowing trees, I hope you didn't give him a hard time, according to the Mishnah, because he was following Rabban Gamliel and he was A-OK. So yesterday we talked about fruit trees bearing figs. We used figs as an example. There was a minimum amount of figs to be considered that this is a field of trees, and you could go ahead and plow the entire area of this Beit Seah, 50 by 50 amot, for the benefit of the trees. Now, Mishnah Gimel says, Echad ilan srak, echad ilan machal. Even if these three trees are ilan srak, a barren tree, or ilan machal, an edible tree, a tree's growing some other kind of produce, not just figs. Figs was just an example. Roi notan kilohem te'enim. We look at them as if they're figs, because in Mishnah Beit we said that we consider the minimum amount of produce to plow the whole area for figs. If they make a whole kikar devela, a whole kikar of pressed figs, because you take the figs off the tree and you dry them and you'd press them into devela, into like a fig cake, and then you'd cut the fig cake into slices. You'd have like a slice of cake, but it was really a slice of dried figs. It's called devela, and you'd sell it like that in slices. So we measured it by fig trees as the example. So we pretend other trees are like fig trees. So if the tree is big enough, leafy enough, has enough branches, even if it doesn't have any fruit at all, even if it's ilan srak, so we pretend it's like a fig tree. If it's of comparable size of the fig trees that will make this shishim mana worth of devela, then chorshin kol be'etzeh bishvilan. Then we can plow the entire area for their benefit. Bahot mikan, if the trees are smaller than this, they're not going to make so many figs. You only plow according to their need. Now, we said yesterday that was for the ora visolo, for the fig picker and his basket, sort of the workspace around the fig tree, enough space for the guy to pick and have his basket there. So, around the roots, to aerate the roots, let the water into the roots, because again, we're not plowing in preparation to plant something, we're plowing to let water seep into the ground and nurture these trees. Mishnah Doled, Haya echad ose kikar devela, Shnayim Einosim. If one of these three trees, remember the minimum to consider it a Sudei Ilon, a field of trees, is to have three trees, but if one of them makes this Kikar Devela, this Shishim Mana Kikar Devela, enough produce, Shnayim Einosim, the other two don't make fruit, or Shnayim Osin Vechad Eina Ose, or between the two of them, the other two, they do make enough figs or enough equivalent, and one doesn't make ein choshen lehem ela l'tzorkan. You only plow the circle around the tree, not the entire space of the Beit Seah. Ad shiyu mishloisha v'ad tisha, until you, and this applies if you have between 3 trees and 9 trees. So from 3 to 9 trees, if they're not making a whole lot of produce, you just plow next to the trees, not the entire area. Hayu asora, if you have 10 trees, a minion of trees, Rabbosai, mesar lamala, or 10 and more trees, bein osin ben she'ein osin. Whether or not these trees are large enough and developed enough to make this minimal amount of produce, chorshin kol beit seah bishvilan. You can plow the entire area for these trees. Now the Mishnah brings a scriptural source for Tosefet Sheviit, for not plowing Erev Sheviit. Shenemar b'charish of katzir tishbot. The Torah says, from your plowing and harvesting, you will keep Sabbath. And this pasuk is actually about Shabbos Breishis, which comes once a week. And we don't have to tell you this is about plowing and harvesting on Sheviit, on the sabbatical year itself, because we already have a pasuk for the sabbatical year, Karmecha lo tizra, etc. So we already have a pasuk to teach us the Isser Malacha on Shabbos Breishis, the once a week Shabbos. We already have a pasuk teaching the Isser of agricultural work on Sheviit, on the sabbatical year. So this Harish Katzir Tishbot, it's extra. So we have a concept in understanding the Torah, im eino inyan. If there's no reason the Torah writes here, then it must apply to a similar concept somewhere else. You understand, Hashem doesn't want us to waste our time and our money. Ink is very expensive. Ink is still very expensive. When you're talking about the ink for a Sefer Torah and for a Torah scroll, the cloth, it's very expensive. Hashem doesn't want to waste our time and our money and our energy. There are no extra words in the Torah. There's not even an extra letter in the Torah. So im eino inyan, if there's no inyan by Shabbos Bereishis or by Shvius, then what's this talking about? Elo harish shel erev Shvius. So this Harish Katzir Tishbot is talking about Erev Shvius, Shu Nichnas B'Shvius. And the Katzir is going to be the Motzei Shvius, we're going to learn later. If Katzir Shel Shvius, Shu Yotze the Motzei Shvius, Baruch Hashem. So the Mishnah did teach us. So this Harish Katzir Tishbot, it doesn't apply to Shabbos Bereishis, it doesn't apply to Shvius, it's Erev Shvius and Motzei Shvius. So this Im Eino Inyan, these words don't apply to what we thought they applied to. They apply that it's a deraisa concept. Remember, when we started off, it's deraisa bizman shebeis hamikdash kayam. God willing, soon we're going to have this again as a deraisa. When we have the temple in Jerusalem, we have on a deraisa level, these words in the Torah mean that we have a restriction on plowing erev Shvius, which is going to be in preparation for work on Shvius, and we have a prohibition on harvesting motzei Shvius of things that grew on Shvius. Now we're going to find out there are mutter permitted ways to harvest and do some forms of work during Sheviit itself. Rabbi Yishmael says, what are these words for that we've been talking about? Me charish rishus. The charish we're talking about in the prohibition of plowing on Shabbos is rishus. It's one that is, one that you want to do. You're plowing because you feel like plowing, because you want to plow. Af katsira rishus, so to the harvesting is rishus. It's one that you do because you want to. Yatsa katsira omer. And this excludes Ketziras HaOmer. So Baruch Hashem, we're counting the Omer right now. So what does he mean? That's not a Rishus. It's a mitzvah. So cutting the Omer is not restricted on Shabbos, according to Rabbi Yishmael, because it's not a Rishus. It's not something that you do because you want to. You're cutting the Omer because you need to, because Hashem told us to, because it's a mitzvah. So even when Motzei Pesach, the second night of Pesach, when in Chutz La'aretz, in America, we're having a second Seder. Over at Eretz Yisrael, when we have a Beis Hamikdash, God willing, they're cutting the Omer. And that's even if it's on Shabbos. Rabbi Yishmael teaches us these words are not extra, and they're not necessarily applied to Tosefes Shvius, but they apply to the fact that we are commanded to harvest and cut the barley for the Korban Omer, even on Shabbos itself. So that's what he uses his words for, and this is the famous concept of Im Eino Inyan. If these words are seemingly extra, since there's nothing extra in the Torah, we need to figure out where these words actually apply and what they mean lahalacha. Shkoyach Rabosai.